blessing to speak before you all today, celebrating one of the countless traditions that were ignored for the past 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Oxford Dictionary defines pandemic as a, quote, disease prevalent over a whole country or the world, end quote. But how do you define a disease? In the medical sense, Oxford tells us a disease is, quote, a particular abnormal condition that negatively affects the structure or function of all or part of an organism, end quote. But racial discrimination and hatred today is more threatening than any other disease. And if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were here today, he would agree. In his final speech, I've been to the mountaintop, King states, quote, the nation is sick. Trouble is in the land, end quote. King states this after the bus boycotts, after the sit-ins, after Brown v. Board in education, and after the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In King's lifetime, in an era of radical and forward-thinking change, he saw how deeply diseased America was. He saw the Mississippi River carrying the country's economy on the boats in its waters, and how it was stained with the blood of black boys like Emmett Till. King saw America the Beautiful and its amber waves of grain. He saw how the beautiful feathered seeds which nurtured America's children grew from the ground, which was weeded, tilled, watered, and finally nurtured by the bodies of African slaves. In his final speech, King said, quote, if something isn't done, and done in a hurry, to bring the colored peoples of the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect, the whole world is doomed. Now I'm just happy that God has allowed me to live in this period to see what is unfolding, end quote. He believed that what he could see in the scars of America was at its peak. But what would he say if he could see us today? How would King feel if he looked upon the familiar Mississippi to see its stained waters turn deep crimson with every unjust murder of black citizens? Saw our boat running over a river dyed with the blood of Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, and the thousands of those whose names we might never know because there was no one recording. How would King feel if he knew that the Federal Reserve remarks, quote, black families' median and mean wealth is less than 15% that of white families, at $24,100 and $142,500 respectively, end quote. How would he feel knowing the descendants of those African slaves who nurtured the ground are still finding tooth and nail to find equality upon it? He would say that America is facing a pandemic that he believed he had brought to an end. The goal of the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s was to gain equal rights and protection under the law for African Americans. Yet 58 years after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, this goal is not yet fully realized. According to the Washington Post, quote, although half of the people shot and killed by police are white, black Americans are shot at a disproportionate rate. They account for less than 13% of the US population, but are killed by police at more than twice the rate of white Americans, end quote. This means for every 1 million black Americans, 37 are shot and killed by police. For every 1 million white Americans, 15 are shot and killed by police. But these are just nationwide statistics. Closer to home, these numbers worsen. In Chicago specifically, a study by Mapping Police Violence, quote, Chicago police killed black people at 24 times the rate of white people per population from 2013 to 2021, end quote. If it is hard to visualize these statistics, allow me to make them perfectly clear. From 2013 to 2021, Chicago police killed 64 black people. In these same 8 years, Chicago police killed 3 white people. There's not a single one of these murders that are just, and every life lost must be mourned. On the same note, it is important to use a critical lens as we observe what the citizens we put in charge to keep us safe feel the best actions are to complete the job. These statistics show they believe eliminating black Americans is the way to go, and it doesn't seem like equal rights and protection under the law to me. So where are the rights we were promised in the Civil Rights Act that Dr. King fought so hard for? If he were here with us today, Dr. King would say that racial discrimination is keeping black Americans from equal protection under the law, equal housing, equal graduation rates, equal incarceration rates, equal childbirth death rates, and equal poverty rates. Dr. King would feel that the pandemic of racial hate is still keeping black Americans from equality. He would feel that the months spent walking to work in the cold winters with his fellow activists during the bus boycotts were not enough. He would feel that the public hatred endured from lunch counter sit-ins were not enough. He would feel that his march to the Capitol was not enough, that his dream was not enough and that his life's work was not enough. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would believe that racial discrimination is the most threatening pandemic because his work was supposed to be the cure. Before I go, I'd like to share with you a personal story. For a little context, I am biracial, the oldest of 5 kids, and a passionate writer. One day, my baby sister asked me, "What is my special blackness?" And my heart ached for her. Not because she felt left out, but for the ever-bright innocence within her, left untouched by the society who shaped mine. Now, citing my sources for my pain is a bit difficult, but I'll try my best. My sources are the scars carved into my skin by the hateful eyes and daggers they glare upon me. They are the insecurities and complexes woven into the idea of myself before I can understand the idea of simple addition. They are the muffled cries of a black girl who cries alone, too afraid to tell the world she is suffering, not allowed to tell the world she is suffering. In King's speech, The 3 Evils of Society, King said, quote, "For those who are telling me to keep my mouth shut, I can't do that. I'm against segregation at lunch counters, and I'm not going to segregate my moral concerns. And we must know that in some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it political? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? And there are times where you must take a stand that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but you must do it because it is right," end quote. King told us to speak our minds with our mouths proudly open. It took me years to learn how, and as I stand before you, I'm not sure if I'm doing it quite right, but I'm going to keep trying. Every word that I've written is a brick of generational silence being torn down. For every word I've spoken, mine has been opened, impacted, and rewritten. Today, I implore you all to do the same. In February of 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in Washington, D.C., quote, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope," end quote. If he were here today, I believe he would feel great disappointment, but I know he would feel infinite hope. While we may not be in the world that King imagined, there's still time for us to create it. I ask that you use your voice to speak against racism, discrimination, and hatred. Whether it's in English, French, or Portuguese, whether you are 10, 15, or 55, use your voice in any way that you know how. There's no wrong way to fight for equality. All I ask is that you wear a mask while you do it, because we are still living through a few pandemics. Thank you.